Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the Operations Committee to order for October 18th. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest this evening? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion for the approval of the agenda. I have Councillor Abdallah, second by Councillor Reevy. Those in favor? That's carried. We have this evening the minutes of September 20th before us, having been duly circulated. I entertain a motion for their adoption. I have Councillor Lafreniere, second by Councillor Giacono. Those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. First item I have this evening is business arising from minutes, and it is Accessibility Advisory Committee recommendation. Welcome, Mr. Lapierre. I understand you're addressing this one.
Yes, I am. Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a follow-up to a previous meeting with respect to accessibility at construction sites regarding intersections. There was some discussion, and the question came up with respect to roadway and sidewalk rehabilitation. And during the scope of the project, there'd be one part of an intersection that might be rehabilitated and made accessible. And then the other side, which wasn't part of the scope of the project, wouldn't be. So there was that discussion. And the committee asked the Accessibility Advisory Committee discuss the matter and provide a recommendation. And they have discussed it, and their recommendation is that future road and sidewalk construction projects consider in high traffic areas and with due consideration to the budget that adjacent sidewalks to the new project be also made AODA compliant. So there are no current financial implications with respect to that recommendation.
The discussion, Councillor Lafreniere, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, that's great, because I had received a concern about River Road, and thank you very much for following up. So I'm wondering in the future then, through the chair to Mr. Lewis, would you be able to, when projects like this are coming forward and it's not affecting it, would you give us the differential in the estimates so that council can decide yes or no? And hopefully it's going to always be yes.
Through you, Mr. Chair. I can definitely include that in the reports going forward to show the difference.
Excellent. So for anybody watching who didn't follow the meeting where I brought this up, it was sometimes when we're fixing, we're repairing a road or a sidewalk, and we're not fixing the other sidewalk. One side of the sidewalk entrance is accessible and the other one is not. So sometimes people in wheelchairs or pulling wagons or something of that nature will come down a nice smooth edge on an accessible sidewalk and then be faced with a 3-inch curb on the other side of the roadway. So this is just in the future going forward. Anytime we're working in an area where there is 2 corners, we would ensure that they both are accessible. So thank you very much.
So Reevy?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it is important to consider those things when you're making the sidewalks compliant. The one thing that was discussed at Accessibility Advisory was, yes, you can do the one directly across the road, but what about the sidewalk then, or the curb 1 or 2 blocks down? So I think the meat of this is that you consider it in high traffic areas. To do every sidewalk in the city is not going to happen, but if you have particular spots that are well-traveled and most likely have people with scooters, wheelchairs, that it's important. But your idea about getting all the costs, that's great.
Councillor Abdallah?
Thank you, Chair. A question for Mr. Lewis through the Chair. Some of the newer intersections, like over on Howard Street near McDonald's, that has tactile domes on the edge of the curb. Is that correct, from what I recall, for vision impaired?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yeah. The
So-
Twizzies is what we call them.
What's that?
Twizzy is what we call them.
Twizzy? Okay. So will this resolution cover that also in high-traffic areas?
To include AODA compliant, the Twizzy must be installed,
Okay.
so that would be included.
Thank you.
Any other comments? If not, we'll receive that report, and great news in terms of moving forward and thinking ahead. Next item up is new business. First up is snow clearing, city parking lots. Mr. Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as of August 19th, Council of the City of Pembroke is in lame duck, and as such, Council is unable to make any expenditures that exceeds $50,000. On April 5th, Council enacted bylaw number 2022-30, delegating authority to the Chief Administrative Officer to take action where necessary for the restricted authority lame duck period. As the awarding of the above-mentioned tender will result in an increase exceeding the threshold, and unless there is significant concern expressed by Council, the CAO will approve the award of the snow clearing city parking lots 2022 to 2024, tender number T-22-11, to H&H Construction, Inc., for the 2-year contract value of approximately $298,460 plus HST, being the only responsive and responsible bidder. Tender number T-22-11 for snow clearing parking lots is for the 2022-23 and the 2023-24 winter seasons. The contract was publicly advertised and tendered, with only one bid received. The tender was opened on September 29th by the purchasing manager and the manager of operations. The bid was analyzed for mathematical errors and none were found. The bid received was from H&H Construction for a 2-year approximate contract value of $289,460 plus applicable HST. The previous contractor for this item was H&H Construction, Inc. The unit pricing for the tender is firm for the 2-year contract period and represents an increase in snow clearing per event of approximately 63%. The bid results in an increase of roughly $56,000 annually for the next 2 winter seasons for the various parking lots. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. I have Councillor Abdallah, Councillor Jacquino, and then Councillor Frenier.
Through you, Chair, to Mr. Lewis, that's quite the astronomical increase, 63%. What did the contractor, I know it's COVID-related and supply chain and personnel, but what other reasons did they give?
Generally, we've analyzed the bids that were received. It is broken down per parking lot for the various different facilities. So there have been some additions to parking lots and some scope of work that would have increased the bid, especially when it related to the handwork, the hand shoveling and the hand sanding of pedestrian areas related to the parking lots. As well, we all know fuel increases, staffing increases, and trying to secure the proper staffing and so forth. The other requirement of our parking lots is to haul away the snow so that we don't occupy parking spaces. We do everything we can to try and ensure there's enough parking space for everybody to use these lots, and we require the contractor to haul all that snow away. So with that restriction, it does increase the cost because they have to come in within 24 hours to try and get that snow hauled away as well.
Councillor Jacquino?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Lewis. I have a tendency to agree, astronomical costs, but again, as Councillor Abdallah said, it's fuel, logistics as well, expansion of the area. My concern is there's only one bidder, I agree with staff. You folks are the experts. You deal with this all the time. You know if the recommendation or the bid is off the wall and irregular. I know you're going to bring that back to council. I don't hear that. I hear that we need to have it done. But my concern is the one bid. Are other people getting out of the snow moving business, or what is that? You think with the amount of money that's being paid out, it has to have some amount of profit or people wouldn't do it.
Through you, Mr. Chair, there's a number of factors that are involved, and with fuel prices, equipment prices going up, the smaller contractors that do snow removal and snow hauling, snow plowing, may not have the financial resources to replace the equipment the way the equipment prices are now, to keep the staff, the increase in cost to keep staff in, especially on a temporary basis. Snow plowing is a temporary contract. So to keep staff there, to deal with the fuel increases, some of the smaller contractors just can't do it. So the larger contractors are taking some of these bigger contracts. City of Pembroke contract is quite sizable. We have a number of parking lots, and the smaller contractors, it's getting to the point where the smaller contractors just can't do it. They don't have the equipment and the wherewithal to do it. So unfortunately, it does lead to fewer contractors looking at it. There's a lot of other municipalities that are starting to hire out contractors to do this, and With the cost of equipment, they're not purchasing their own equipment to do it, they're hiring contractors, so it makes it difficult. We only have a limited number of contractors in the area.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That answers my inquiries. Thank you.
Councillor Frenier?
My questions were asked, but, this is scary. This is scary. We did a budget back in January for this year, and if this is any indication of what we're going to be looking at, I mean, let's face it, this pandemic's going to hit us all in the wallet, so it's unfortunate. But yeah, like as Mr. Lewis said, I guess we have not much to do about it. We have to remove snow. Thank you.
So having said that, given that we're in a lame duck, if I can ask the question, while I understand, and I'm not minimizing committee's concerns in respect to the particular response to this tender, but the question becomes, do we have such a significant concern that we want to express that to Mr. Lapp here? Because I'm not going to look for a show of hands, because it appears then that it's as if it's a vote. So is there any Okay, one last question.
Well, really, I'm going to take staff's recommendation. I don't think we have any alternative, and can you just answer that quite bluntly?
If there was a significant concern raised and I was not to move forward with this, there would be a significant amount of liability on council and the residents of the city who pay the insurance premiums.
So with that, I'm seeing some nods, and so we'll move on to the next one then. The next one, Mr. Lewis, is the next two, I guess, are policies. So the first one, policy, is winter control operations. You've certainly been busy. The first one with focusing in on the downtown core.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Operations Department recommends committee formally accept the attached policy for the winter control operations within the downtown core. At the January 18th, 2022 committee meeting, the department provided a report in response to events in Nelson, BC, and in keeping with a large number of Canadian municipalities regarding winter control operations and the formalizing of policies to aid in defensive claims. At that time, direction was provided to develop a formal policy for winter control operations within the downtown core, based on continuing with the current removal operations, and those operations include streets and on-street parking spaces are plowed and the snow is pushed and stored in the boulevard area as per the city's policy for winter control. Sidewalks are plowed and snow is pushed and stored in the boulevard area, approximately 4 to 6 times per winter season, depending upon the severity of the winter. The stockpiled snow is removed and from the boulevard areas, typically overnight, so that we do not affect the downtown businesses and traffic. Also included in the policy is the description of the area included in the downtown core, as well as the specific sidewalks that are included in this policy, which provides the details necessary to formalize the policy. If committee is in agreement with the attached draft policy, numbered 300.413, winter control operations for the downtown core, a bylaw will be brought forward at the next council meeting. There are no immediate financial implications associated with this report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. So the policy was circulated with this report, so questions and comments and so forth, and hopefully a motion. Councillor Lafreniere.
Question in point. I do not believe that the corner at the post office is included in the downtown core, or can you correct me if I'm wrong?
Through you, Mr. Chair, it is included. I'm trying to remember off the top of my head.
So my concern...
The downtown core, I apologize, the downtown core includes Pembroke Street East, both sides, from McKay Street to Maple Avenue.
Okay, so it does include...
That's correct.
So my concern there, and I brought this up before, is we get lots of complaints about that corner at the post office. People pull in there when the weather's bad, and then people come around the corner turning east off McKay, and it's treacherous. And even, I know that we always agree to this, but I've either said we need to eliminate the parking in front of the post office in the winter, because I don't know how many threats I've seen on social media about, well, if they don't soon clean that snow in front of the post office, da-da-da-da-da, and we've all heard it. So I'm wondering what this committee feels about that, because it's hard to stay on top of it. And as you know, some of the dumps of snow we get. So I don't know if we should talk to the post office. Maybe they should maintain that. I don't know. So I'm just asking committee for that discussion now about what to do about that parking, because it is really dangerous on that corner in the winter.
Want to first address it from a staff point of view? And
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, we do try and address that snowbank that builds up from the parking. It does become cumbersome in the way of timing. So we start out first thing in the morning, the sidewalk equipment leaves the shop at River Road and Metcalf, and one of the first places it goes to is the post office. Turns right on Pembroke Street East, goes up to Maple, crosses the street, comes back down, and then filters down into the downtown core. Because McKay Street and Pembroke Street East are primary streets, they get plowed quite frequently. Every time the plow comes around the corner, there's a little bit of snow at the windrow that goes back in there. If there happens to be vehicles parked in the parking spaces, when the plow goes by, he doesn't get to it, he comes back around again afterwards and tries to get those when they're empty. So we are trying to monitor it. When we have the equipment in the downtown core, and when we do the downtown core portion with the sidewalk machines, we have 2 operating in the downtown core at the same time. So it's a matter of trying to get one of them to scoot back up and do it again before he leaves the downtown core. So we are trying to monitor it as best we possibly can. To start working with the post office, it's something that we could discuss, but you start looking at the liabilities and whose liability is it if they're asked to maintain it. You start bordering on some iffy situations there. So I think the way staff is handling it right now, we'll try and keep an eye on it and try and monitor as best we can so that we can at least push out the snowbank away from those parking spaces and let people gain access.
Thank you, and I guess we'll revisit it maybe next winter, and if it isn't, I know they have a large parking lot in the back, so maybe they could remedy it by changing the parking for the post office. So anyway, that's just a thought. Thank you, Brian.
okay, Councillor Abdallah.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, question for Mr. Lewis. Section 6 under snow removal, approximately 4 to 6 times per winter season, the stockpile snow is removed from the boulevard areas. Is there a certain cutoff point for a height in the downtown core when you come and do that, or is it just depending upon when you notice that it's gathered at a certain height? Is there a designated height for that, or?
Through you, Mr. Chair, included in the policy in the same section, snow removal operations by the city will occur when the windrow accumulation is higher than 60 centimeters. So we try and keep an eye on that. 60 centimeters is roughly 2 feet. So we try and keep an eye on how high that is. We also watch the forecast. So it may not be 60 centimeters, but we've got a forecast that's going to see no snow accumulation for a few days. That would allow staff the opportunity to go down and do a removal before we get hit with the next big storm. So the policy and our standards are about 60 centimeters of snow in the windrow, but we keep an eye on it and try and work around our operations and the forecast and so forth and judge that.
Jacquino?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Lewis. I noticed last winter, when the windrows get fairly high, we have a lot of seniors within our community that are trying to access banks, et cetera. And being seniors and being stubborn perhaps, they don't always go to the lights to cross over. Many are on walkers or with canes, et cetera. So they'll try and negotiate, to navigate the windrow, many times spilling, falling. I've seen that happen. Years ago, maybe not that long ago, some businesses had actually taken it upon themselves to clear a small area in front of their store. If it was a pharmacy, for example, somebody was being dropped off, rather than going to the lights and walking 3/4 of a block, they had the access. Perhaps, I don't know what the liability issue is, et cetera, but it's just about getting people, to their access point in the shortest amount of time and in the safest amount of time. Perhaps the snow angels may be involved somehow to clear a section every here and there. I don't know if that's a good idea or not. Otherwise, you've got a senior citizen walking, maybe 200-300 yards or 200 feet to go to the bank, and they're parked a long way off. The people that are in good shape and healthy, they can jump right over that windrow, but seniors can't, and they often do that at their own risk. Perhaps the snow angels could be involved, just Just an idea.
Councillor Frenier?
I don't believe the Snow Angels program is for business, commercial enterprise. It's more of a keep the seniors in their home longer, and it's more for residents who are seniors who can't do it themselves or can't get anybody to do it. So unfortunately, unless someone wants to create a business Snow Angel program, I don't know. But anyway, I understand what you're saying, but yeah.
So is there any motion to accept the policy in draft form 300.413 at this time? Is it a motion, Councillor Reevy?
Yes.
Is it a second, Councillor Abdallah?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to accept the draft policy 300, so not dash, .413. Those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Mr. Lewis, the last item under new business this evening, another policy, as I say, you've been busy, winter control operations, sidewalk snow plowing.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Operations Department recommends committee formally accept the attached policy for winter control operations, sidewalk snow plowing. So again, in response to the issues in Nelson, BC, formalized policy regarding winter control operations has become necessary, especially to help in the aid of defensive claims. The previous policy for winter control operations was established in 2005 after renditions in 1983, 1997, and 1998, and those renditions included 2 wards. The city has since been divided into 3 wards to better serve the residents. At the February 15th, 2022 Operations Committee meeting, staff was directed to develop a formal policy for winter control operations for sidewalk snow plowing for the east, west, and center wards, continuing with current operations. So the current operations include the following. The city's sidewalks are divided into 3 wards, being the east ward, west ward, and center ward. The east ward and center ward presently share the responsibility for the downtown core. Primary streets and most secondary streets, as well as those in the downtown core, have sidewalks on both sides being maintained during the winter months. Residential streets that are in high traffic areas and have consistently high pedestrian traffic, such as those immediately adjacent to schools, daycares, etc., have the sidewalks on both sides maintained where applicable and practicable. Several of the city's residential streets currently have sidewalks on both sides of the street. Many of these streets only have the sidewalk on one side of the street maintained in the winter to support an operationally efficient route that allows for sidewalks to be cleared in a timely manner. The new policy meets the intent of the requirements of the minimum maintenance standards for municipal highways, Ontario Regulation 239/02. If the committee is in agreement with the attached draft policy, 300.412, winter control operations for sidewalk snow plowing, a bylaw will be brought forward at the next council meeting. There are no immediate financial implications associated with this report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Questions, comments, and motions? Councillor Reevy?
I would move that we accept the policy as presented.
So there's a motion to accept the draft policy 300.412. Is it seconded by Councillor Abdallah? Any other comments, questions? Councillor Frenier?
Yeah, I saw Everett Street here somewhere, but it was only from Norman Street to Eganville Road. And I'm just still scanning, because earlier today I looked through and I couldn't see Everett Street from Norman Street to Bennett. So unless it's my vision, can you clarify if that's there?
Through you, Mr. Chair, there is no official sidewalk from
I
Norman
know.
Street to
So
Bennett
that's-
Street.
Exactly.
It's a paved shoulder that was added within the last couple of years.
Yes,
Paved shoulders are generally done by the snow plows
okay.
and not the sidewalk machines.
So that was where my question was going. In a roadway that is heavily traveled with pedestrians, school buses, that kind of thing, where there is no sidewalk, do they go a little wider with the plow to make sure that that paved area for walking is cleaned?
Yeah.
They
Through
do.
you, Mr. Chair, generally, we do try and get that paved shoulder with the wing of the street plow.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much.
Just to build upon that, Councillor Frenier, and something for the for the future council is the plow can only do that if vehicles aren't parked in that particular area, which is an issue, which then becomes a bylaw enforcement issue and getting bylaw to work in evenings and on weekends. But in any event,
Thank you.
so I'll call the question. Those in favor of that particular motion, and that one's carried. And I'd entertain a motion to adjourn, moved by Councillor Abdallah, seconded by Councillor Reevy. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this council meeting of Tuesday, October the 18th, 2022 to order. Would you please stand? Before opening this meeting of council, I'd ask those who wish, each in your own way, silently join in a prayer of guidance over these proceedings. Thank you. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof? Minutes, approve the minutes from our council meeting which was held on October the 4th, 2022. Moved by Councillor Reevy, seconded by Councillor Abdallah. All those in favor? Carried. Adopting the minutes from the Operations Committee meeting which was held on September the 20th, 2022. Moved by Councillor Lafreniere, seconded by Councillor Giacono. All those in favor? Carried. Bylaw 2022-68, Councillor Reevy.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Deputy Mayor Gervais. That bylaw 2022-68, a bylaw to authorize the amendment of zoning bylaw 2020-05 regarding 500 Catherine Street be adopted and passed, and further that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation.
As I mentioned at the Planning Committee meeting, the last meeting we had, I'll be requiring a recorded vote on this particular issue. So are there any comments? Councillor Reevy?
Thank you, Your Worship. There's been some discussion surrounding the committee, the Planning Advisory and Adjustment Committee's approval of the rezoning. And it's a fairly contentious issue. Chair of that advisory committee, Chair Levasseur, did publicly note that he's afraid to see the watering down of these R zones to allow for infill multiplex units such as happening in Toronto. And it's understandable with the populations there. But he felt that in a city as small as Pembroke, that we should be thinking of doing things a little bit different and possibly signal to the province that the provincial policy statement isn't a cover-all. So there's been a compromise, I think, that would be amenable to council as well as the residents of Catherine and the city residents at large. So proposing that instead of the original ask to rezone from R1 to R2 is that we propose an R1 special exception zone. So essentially, the builder would not have to ask for rezoning, but for a special exemption to put in the duplex. However, he would not be able to add a further 2 units as allowed by the PPS. So I think it is, again, it's a very good compromise. The residents that were against the original application for rezoning seem to be okay with this as well. Thank you.
Councillor Giacono?
Thank you, Your Worship. I have not had the opportunity to speak to any of those residents. Would that be the residents on the entire street, or just people that would be impacted, next to the property?
It's my understanding that it was the residents who were opposed to it originally. Mr. Milovic had quite a few people sign, and we had seen those folks during our meeting and the public meeting as well. So,
Your Worship, just in closure, I will be voting against it. I believe that this is a neighborhood that has been defined for over 60 years, and to come along and say, okay, well, we're just going to change that. I think part of the beauty of living in a small community such as ours is that you have certain areas, where people can say, look, that's an entirely residential area. I feel safe there with my children, and it's where I would like to live. New development across, the city of Pembroke, any new development has the inclusions to have different types of housing. whether it's R1, R2, condos or whatever, and I think that's the proper fit. But in this particular case, I do not see it, even though the residents may have come to some sort of a conclusion. I don't think it's all of them, because I've spoken to some. I've spoken to an individual on Cecilia Street, and he does not agree with it. Thank you.
Councillor Lafreniere?
Yeah, thank you. I think this is a good compromise, because when I first came into that last meeting, I felt bad for the neighbors, that they felt they were losing the integrity of their community. But however, I said the last 2 terms here, we've been promoting infilling, as the province has been recommending. We know that we're facing a housing shortage in our community, so we've been trying to, make sure that we increase the units in our city. But I think that this is a good compromise, because it will still provide two new units on that street. And I don't think it'll compromise the environment, because there is one in the next street. So I think it's a great compromise. Thank you.
Councillor Abdallah?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to support the motion. I spoke to Mr. Milkovic the day after the last meeting, and we discussed this compromise, this exemption here of keeping it R1 and having the exemption, and he seemed to be pleased with that it stays in R1, but we have the exemption here. And I did say to him, the developer can build a 2-unit regardless of what we approve. And I said, if he did build a single-family home there, and if 10 people moved in with 4 cars, it's the same thing or more than somebody moving in to a duplex. And he said, yes, that's true. I also said that, the home is going to fit into the neighborhood, because I spoke to Mr. Bennett again today to get some clarification, and it's going to be the same type of garden home / duplexes that they have along off Bell Street across from Riverview Heights, so it's the same thing. I know a doctor who was here at the hospital, and we're looking for medical personnel and housing and jobs and all this, and which jobs are created by building this home. But the doctor had to live in Quebec because he couldn't get a place to stay, all the way over in Waltham. And this is the situation. So the more mixed housing development we can have, the better. I wouldn't support a 4-plex at this place, but it's a low-lying duplex, and so I will be supporting it. I'm glad that the compromise has come. It shows that we can compromise, and what Councillor Reeve said, we don't have to go by the provincial policy statement all the time, but we're still moving ahead. So I will be supporting the motion.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Worship. I'll be supporting the bylaw. I think it's proper planning, and for everything that's already been said, we're constantly trying to increase our tax base, but setting that aside for a moment, it is proper planning. I think it will fit within the area. There's multiple different areas that you travel throughout the city of Pembroke where there's a mix of different types of housing, and that's what the province, which is the entity that creates our laws, whether it be Municipal Act Planning Act, that's what they're telling us to do. So we're simply following with what the official plan is, what the Planning Act states. I don't see any issue with it. Thank you.
Councillor Giacono?
A point of order, Your Worship, I would just like to correct Councillor Abdallah, if I may. He said that, you could build a bungalow and have 10 vehicles there. That is not allowed. The bylaw only allows 2 vehicles in a residential area. So, the statement that you could have 10 vehicles there, I don't feel in my position would be correct. And thank God for democracy, that we all have an opinion. And whatever the outcome, we're doing the best for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Abdallah?
Point of order, Councillor Giacono, through the Mayor, I said 10 people and 4 vehicles, so I'll correct myself, two vehicles and 10 people in the home.
Any other comments? All right, I'd ask the CEO, please, to take the recorded vote.
Yes. Deputy Mayor Gervais? Councillor Reeve?
Yay.
Councillor Abdallah?
Yay.
Councillor Lafreniere?
Yay.
Councillor Giacono?
No.
Mayor Lemay?
Yay.
5 yeas, 1 nay, the motion, or the bylaw carries.
Carries. Okay, thank you very much. Bylaw 2022-69, Councillor Abdallah.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Ed Giacono, that bylaw 2022-69, a bylaw to authorize the entering into an agreement between the Pembroke Business Improvement Area, PBIA, and the Corporation of the City of Pembroke be adopted and passed, and further, that said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation.
Thank you. Any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? Carried. Bylaw 2022-70, Councillor Reevy.
Thank you, Your Worship. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Abdallah, that bylaw 2022-70, a bylaw to appoint municipal bylaw enforcement officers for the City of Pembroke, be adopted and passed. And further, that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation.
Any comments? Yes, Councillor Reevy.
Yes, Your Worship, this is just to add our new Director of Parks and Recreation, Jordan DeRoche, as well as our new bylaw officer, Grant McLean.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor? Okay, carried. Mayor's report. On Saturday, October the 15th, I brought greetings on behalf of Council to Oktoberfest patrons at the Germania Club. I also had the honor of tapping the keg to get the celebration underway. I thank the members of the Germania Club and their volunteers for their continued support in promoting and maintaining German customs and the German cultural heritage. On Sunday, October the 16th, I brought greetings on behalf of Council to those assembled at Festival Hall for the unveiling of the new seats and the many upgrades to the hall. Thank you to the consortium, and our member on the consortium is Councillor Reevy, for their leadership in raising over $200,000 to replace the theater seats and complete the interior upgrades. We now have a new center for the performing arts and events. Thank you to all the community sponsors and individuals who purchased the seats. And a special thank you to city staff under the leadership of Mr. Lapierre and the staff of the Conseil des Écoles Publiques de l'Est de l'Ontario under the leadership of Superintendent Stéphane Vachon in making sure the renovations in the hall were kept on schedule and were completed. I also want to thank Rick Wharton, the director of Festival Hall, for his continued leadership and promotion of Festival Hall and the activities that take place. I want to encourage our residents to vote in our upcoming municipal election. Internet voting is available now by using your voting PIN found on your voter information letter. If you have not received a voter information letter, please contact City Hall. And on October the 24th, traditional voter ballots will be available at the Royal Canadian Legion. Pembroke has over 10,300 eligible voters, and as of 5:30 today, 1,094 residents have voted. So I encourage everyone to please check the information being provided by the candidates and be sure to vote. Thank you very much. Councillor updates. Councillor Abdallah.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is on behalf of the Deputy Mayor and I. Last night we had a community watch meeting at the Pembroke Fire Station. We had good attendance. Councillor Friendly was there. Good to see Councillor Friendly's been to a few of our meetings, which is good. So the meeting was very well attended, as I said, and we had a wonderful presentation by Mr. Fred Blackstein, who we all know, great community builder, on the Pembroke waterfront, and he gave a nice slideshow and background of the history of the Pembroke Waterfront Park, and also the reason why, you know, the millions of dollars in volunteer hours that have gone into it, and the reason why we made it a special community watch safety zone. Then we had Stacey Taylor, the vice chair of the PBA, and Bethia Summers, the director. They spoke about their plans to canvass the downtown residential. Stacey's son's going to take care of that. Stacey will do the downtown core this winter, and in the spring or before, they'll come before the Police Services Board, and we'll have a community watch zone in the downtown core. That's a major step because it'll back onto the river, the waterfront park, and we already have a community watch zone around Victoria Street, Victoria Centre area. And our next meeting will be the first Monday in April. We had 2 new members join, and one of them is going to canvass the Town Line Road area this fall for Community Watch Zone. So the program is growing, and it's good to see. And we want to do a shout out to our volunteers that are the backbone of the program. If anybody wants information on that, they can contact myself or the Deputy Mayor Gervais anytime. This Saturday at the skateboard park, the Rapid Skate Park, there's a Halloween event, or an annual Halloween event. It's called Nightmare on Lake Street. And there'll be candy, and there's competition. The city is a sponsor of $500, which comes from the Family Youth Programming budget. So we welcome everyone to come down to the skateboard park at noon on Saturday. It's being put on by the Skateboard Initiative Committee, led by Randy Peterson and Tanner Hogan at the Colony Skateboard Shop. So that's going to be a wonderful event, and the weather's looking good. And we encourage everyone to wear a costume. So in French we say déguisement. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Lafreniere.
So I just want to commend a couple of members of our council here. First of all, I want to commend Councillor Reevy for her last couple of terms on council and her blood, sweat, and tears that she's put into Festival Hall as our representative on the consortium. And I know she really did put a lot into helping fundraise for the new seats and being there, you know, to make sure they're installed. And I don't know, you were supposed to be their pizza runner, I think, and you had to back out of that. I remember yeah, okay, you were yes, okay. But anyway, I just want to say thank you for all your hard work, because it looks fabulous. We were lucky to be there, fortunate to be there for a debate last week, and it just blew our minds. It was great. So thank you on behalf of the City of Pembroke and everybody who uses that facility. So thank you so much. Again, I want to commend Councillor Abdallah for his hard work and his community awareness, and for carrying the torch for the skateboard park. So I want to thank him publicly. I know it's something that was close to my heart when I came on to council. It still is. I'm not as active in it. But God bless Terry O'Neill, because he was my advocate here when I got that skateboard park organized in 2001, I believe. So thank you, Councillor Abdallah, for carrying the torch and keeping it going in the city of Pembroke. And finally, I want to commend our fire hall for their open house, because it was great to be almost back to normal after COVID. And I think a lot of young people, my granddaughter won a prize. So I want to commend the fire department. Thank you. That's it.
Councillor Giacono.
Worship, I would direct this through you to Councillor Abdallah. I know that he was in the log cutting competition at the Germania Club on Saturday night and did an exemplary effort. And I'm just wondering whether he'll be strapping on his skateboard at the Halloween party. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Giacono. All right, we will be moving into closed session. So Councillor Lafreniere, please.
Motion for council to move into a caucus meeting on October 18th, 2022, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Ed Jackno, that this meeting be a closed meeting to discuss a position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiations carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board, and advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose.
All those in favor? Carried. We'll now move into closed session. Thank you.